On this episode, I will share everything I know when it comes to chub fishing on lures. So, I will cover different fishing styles as in topwater fishing, hard crankbait fishing, and also soft silicone lure fishing for chub. You see, during summer months when it's super hot and water gets very warm and clear, fishing gets very hard since the most fish species do feed well only very early in the morning and also very late at night. And this is where chub fishing comes in. In fact, the best chub fishing days for me has been the ones that are super hot and super bright. I will explain in very fine detail lures that I use, my rigs, my lines, my leaders, my reels and rods, and other pieces of tackle. I'm pretty certain after watching this video you'll be able to catch way more chub when targeting them on lures. And also, just to make this video way more interesting, I will split those theoretical parts of this video and will include actual fishing. So you will be able to find this video hopefully way more entertaining. I will kick off by explaining my favorite method when it comes to catching chub on lures, and that's topwater fishing. I just love casting out my lure and retrieving it towards me and observing it whilst big chub takes it from the surface. That's amazing. So, from my experience, I noted that topwater fishing for chub is only effective during summer months when the water is warmest, and areas where you fish for must be of a certain type, as in they have to have kind of medium or fast flow, and they can't be very deep. I would say meter is the deepest I would go, or choose topwaters to target chub. So very rarely chub would race, to grab a topwater lure if it's deeper than 1 meter. Again, in your rivers it might vary. So now let's talk about my favorite lures. By far my favorite lure, I will say one thing right away. I'm a big fan of some sort of topwater lures when it comes to chub fishing that do create quite a bit of kind of commotion or disturbance on the top, or that slick of the water is getting kind of disturbed a lot, and for that reason my favorite lure is whopper plopper. And this particular shape with 2 propellers, basically those lures or those propellers do cast very well because those propellers kind of are flush to the body on the cast, and then when fish takes they do go flush to the body as well. That's perfect. And these lures, they do not need to be retrieved very fast as well, because just see little blow and the propeller is spinning. Really love these lures, and finish is quite fancy too. And best of all, they're not expensive lures at all, like quite cheap. Then another similar type of lure is cicada. Again, similar sort of deal. It has wings that do go flush to the body on the cast, and then it kind of flops from one side to another side on the retrieve. Again, similar deal, and quite a bit of disturbance on the top of the water. Chub just love these too. And third type of lure is just a simple plopper, or popper should I say. So you just retrieve it like in jerks, and it just produces little plop, plop, plop. And yeah, chub do love that presentation as well. And then a couple of different lures. Again, that's another type of cicada for number 2, that's number 3. And lastly, sometimes I use floating soft silicone lures. For example, this frog is fantastic. Usually I rig it with a single hook exposed, not an offset one. And yeah, you retrieve it kind of similarly as a popper, just pop, 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 and those legs just do like that action, just pop, pop, pop. Especially, if you have a little bit slower water and chub are very tricky to catch, I did find, that these frogs are fantastic. And yeah, the same deal with floating crays as you would use for perch or zand or something like that. I added extra legs on this one, but yeah, that's just a standard floating crayfish. And as you can see, all of my topwater lures are of a type that are being presented in straight line. I'm not saying that you won't catch chub on like walk the dog type of lures and presentations, but I did find, you know, that you miss way more bites on these walk the dog type presentations. Hence, all of my lures that I use for chub are kind of straight retrieve. I'm not saying that you can't do like any sort of crazy presentations like popping them. Even these ones, they do kind of pop very well. You can pause them, you can go slower, faster, you can do a lot of things with these, but either way, they will always go in a straight line. They won't do that because from my experience, as I say, you will miss way more bites if the lure will be doing like that, you know, like changing its kind of travel of line, if you will. So it won't go straight, it will go like that, like walks the dog, I mean. These ones always are going in a straight line. And yeah, also like in a fast flow, walk the dog presentation can be quite difficult to, you know, to get out of any like even very good topwater lures that are designed, you know, to walk as a dog. So yeah, those are my lures when it comes to topwaters. And when it comes to colors, really, I do like various colors, and I would say my favorites would be kind of the ones that do have white belly, or it's just pure snow white lure, probably would be my favorite. Then black is very good, but you know, most of the lures topwaters, they wouldn't have these colors. So and I noticed, you know, that something that is kind of way more aggressive when it comes to its action is way more important than the color is. So these whopper ploppers definitely are the best ones I have found. When it comes to presentation, there is quite a bit to talk about as well. Basically, there are two main approaches when it comes to presentation, so casting upstream or downstream. And really, it will depend on the rivers you are fishing, or I will be fishing on a given day also. But the fact is as follows. You see, active chub will be looking always upstream. So let's imagine that's a chub and flow is coming from that direction. So chub will be looking always that way. And if I would be coming from downstream and casting upstream, that is above that fish, right? So that's a chub, that's my lure. So this chub will see my lure first before knowing that an angler, me, is behind it. And if it's aggressive enough, there is very good chance that it will intercept that lure. Downside of casting upstream is that your lures, or my lures, are always traveling faster than the flow, meaning that this chub has to be aggressive enough to kind of calculate that it will have to waste some energy, you know, to intercept a lure that is going at speed downstream. But again, usually injured fish and so on, injured kind of beds and so on will be traveling downstream. And, you know, chub is very opportunistic, and therefore most likely it will decide to intercept it. But again, on other days, chub won't be as aggressive, and just by casting upstream, they would not commit to my lures. Meaning, as I say, because they are not just aggressive enough, then I would cast downstream. By casting downstream, I always can slow down my lure. I almost can kind of make my lure hang in the flow, if you will. And meaning, you know, chub has way more time, and, you know, just to calculate that thing is in front of me, it's not going away. I can slowly come to it, not consume a lot of energy, and nail it. But again, downside is that if I am casting downstream, there is a very good chance that fish would see me, you know, before me even casting out, and then disappearing and or getting just very cautious as a result. But usually on big rivers, upstream and downstream presentations will work. Downstream presentation or casting downstream will always work. Upstream, depending, you know, on how aggressive fish are on the day. On small rivers though, it's almost always upstream presentation. You'll get less bites sometimes if, you know, fishing is tricky, but I always would get something if I would start casting downstream, because the river is very small, you know, like delicate. Me being near the river or in the river, like wading, causes an issue that chub would see me and would go into the bushes or just would stop feeding whatsoever. Therefore, small rivers, upstream casting, big rivers, try both. And yeah, this will see you catching more fish for sure. I'll have a separate section when it comes to the tackle I use for chub fishing for topwaters toward the end of this video, but for now I will mention this. When I'm topwater fishing for chub, I like to use very thick leaders, short but thick leaders, as I would fish for pike, because what I noticed quite often in those same areas where big chub like to hang around in warm water, big pike will be around as well, and quite often I would hook a big pike as well, and having a thick leader, you know, allows me to land those big pike as well. And I'm doing or safely using thick leaders, I mean like 0.60 millimeters fluorocarbon, or sometimes thin titanium leaders, just to accommodate those pike bites. But what I noted that chub fishing is not affected by those thick leaders at all, because if you think about it, the leader that I'm using is always out of the water and fish just can't see it. And also, since I'm using, you know, lure that creating a lot of, you know, splashing or are creating a lot of splashing on the top of the water, you know, little droplets of water flying all over the place and kind of masking my thick leader. Really, I did not notice any difference when it comes to thickness of the leader. So it's safe to say, at least from my experience, that you can get away with pike leaders when topwater fishing. Again, I will say this, you don't want to use very long leaders, because if you will be using like 0.60 or thicker fluorocarbon, long one, it will have quite a bit of weight, and then it will affect the action of the topwater itself. In here, for example, I have the smallest handing lure, and if I would put like, I don't know, like a meter of 0.60, the weight of the fluorocarbon would affect the lure, and it would not work as well. The balance would be out of whack. So yeah, but short ones like 20 centimeter leaders are absolutely way to go. Very thick ones too. Obviously, again, you don't want to be using like big clips and stuff that would affect the action of the lure, but as I say, small clips, short but thick leaders are absolutely fine. I tested it hundreds of times and really caught fish. And yeah, I did not notice any difference whether thick leader or thin leader when it comes to topwater fishing. Okay, we talked about everything I wanted to talk when it comes to topwater fishing for chub. Now I guess let's make a quick pause to see and catch a few fish on topwaters. Enjoy! Got you. I think that's a very good fish, guys. Finally. Yeah, it feels like a very nice fish, guys. I will take my time this time, just to make sure it would end up in the bag. Can't see it yet. Not a monster, but a couple of kilos maybe. Got you. Yes. Nice, topwater chub. Just look how angry that fish is. Awesome. Okay, let's go back. There are some active fish. Hopefully I will start getting some bites in here. Be nice. Oh, did you see that? That was insane blow up. Good fish as well. Ooh, please stay on. That's a good fish. Ooh, went a bit too much on that drag. That's a big chub. Get in that net. Just look at that. That was awesome blow up. Quite close as well. Just wallop. Quality fish. Thank you. Nice. Just a decent cast and voila, stay on. Don't think it's as big of a fish, but it is a fish. Maybe it is actually, maybe it is. Where are you going, Mr. Chub? It's going downstream, damn it. See, I installed drag clicker on my Diver Tula 80. It's coming. Oh, actually, it's a good one as well. Just keeping it low. A little bit smaller than previous one. It just hooked though. It just hooked. That fast flow. Got you. There we go. Yeah, about 50 centimeters, I would say. Quality fish again. Very good shape. Little scar here. Awesome. Let's go back. On those days when top waters wouldn't work because fish are just not as aggressive, or it's not sunny enough, or they just do not want to take or would not want to take lures from the top, then I would try crankbaits. Many of things that I mentioned about top waters do apply to crankbait fishing as well, but we'll come to that a little bit later. So now let's talk about my favorite crankbaits. In general, chub crankbait is chubby lure, floating one, where the beak or the bill is more or less 45 degrees or even more. So my favorite colors are kind of snow white ones, I would say, with this bright yellow top. This would be my favorite color. Then this kind of reddish can be good, and different ones that are kind of imitating some sort of a bug like brown can be good as well. But anyway, this is my favorite chub crankbait. This one, as you can see, has a decent sized bill, and the angle is, I would say, maybe 45 degrees exactly, meaning that I can control how deep it would go quite well by keeping my tip close to the water, or if I wanted to go a little bit up, I can keep my rod's tip away or up in the air, then it wouldn't dive as deep. But yeah, this kind of orientation of the bill allows me to do that, and chub seem to love this presentation as well. And you see all of these chub crankbaits, they do have very erratic and high-pitched action, if you will, and I believe this is why chub do get confused, even though these baits do look kind of a little bit I would say almost stupid like in the water, but yeah, since they are moving so fast, I think this is what confuses them, and this is why they take those lures. So yeah, that's my number one when it comes to crankbaits. Then number two would be this one. As you can see, it's even shorter than this one, but it's chubbier. This one has slightly smaller bill at similar angle. And this one is a little bit or has a little bit less of a erratic, or the pitch is a little bit smaller than this one. But again, those two are when it comes to bites, I had more or less the same, I would say. Maybe this one not as erratic, but it's chubbier and a little bit shorter, so maybe this is why fish do love this action. Similar sort of deal, just this one is very shallow runner if I can't get them to take my lure on the top, but this is acting as a wake bait almost, because you see bill is almost at 90 degrees, maybe 80 degrees. It dives just slightly, just walks just under the film of the water. And yeah, sometimes it works, but I would say still, if I would have to choose a crankbait, I would go for this one, because this one gives me way more options. I can retrieve it slower and keep my rod's tip up, and it would not dive deep at all. So I can replicate action that this does with this one quite easily. And then the last one that I quite often use, especially in smaller rivers with this, actually that trout minnow, if you will, but you know, it wouldn't dive very deep at all because the bill is quite small and the lure is quite small, but it has like super erratic action. And this color also, you know, as you can see, the same colors or the same color scheme, white, you know, belly and bright yellow top. But yeah, chub, I guess, do like this combination, as in very erratic action or high pitched action with kind of white belly and yellow top. Probably just annoy them and they want to kill it. But yeah, this one is good for me, or being good, you know, on smaller rivers, you know. So yeah, those are my lures. I explained the colors as well. And now when it comes to presentation, exactly the same rules apply as I explained when I was talking about topwaters. Again, you can cast upstream, but then your lure will be going, or my lure is going faster than the flow. If fish are not as aggressive on the days, they just might ignore it. Then I would start casting downstream. Especially if it's a bigger river, with hopes, you know, that fish wouldn't see me before, you know, they see my lure and snatch it. But yeah, and you can do the same exact things as I explained when it comes to actual retrieve. These crankbaits do work very well just on straight retrieve, you know, you just crank them in, and yeah, I had plenty of bites just reeling in. But again, you can do way more, because, you know, it's a floating lure. You can crank it up, it will go deeper, then you make a pause, it will start going up, you crank it again, you can go, you know, like, you can present these lures like with pauses above the weed, you know, very well. And yeah, you can do a lot of things with these lures, but when it comes to twitching them, pausing them, and so on. But remember, simple retrieve, like at the correct pace, will always you get some bites for sure, and more often than not will be the best approach. Because when lure is going, you know, at straight line, I noticed also, you know, with these crankbaits, when you are just straight retrieving it, I would miss way less, kind of, not maybe miss less, but bite to landed fish ratio is definitely better when I'm retrieving these lures, just kind of, you know, just by straight reeling in at consistent speed, doing nothing with the tip, just reeling in the lure. You know, I think fish just locks onto the lure, it knows where it's going, calculates, nails it, fish on, and you know, and they are hooked better as well. So yeah, that's the presentation itself. When it comes to my tackle, again, I will explain it in a special section, tackle section, toward the end of the video. But I will mention this: when I'm using crankbaits, I always use fluorocarbon leaders, way longer ones, as in like 80 centimeters to 1 meter long, just to make sure I have a decent distance between my lure, as in crankbait, and my line, as in my braided line, main line, that is visible. And as I use fluorocarbon leader or hook link, it will be way less visible to the fish. As a result, I want to have it a little bit longer. So as I say, 80 to 1 meter long when I'm using crankbaits. And you know, since most of that leader is in the water, I want it to be longer as well. And when it comes to diameter, my favorite diameters, and the ones I always use, is 0.20 or 0.23 millimeters. And also what I do, I always use some sort of a clip, like tiny ones, the smallest I can get, but strong ones. For example, you see I'm using clips because I want to have some movement. If I would just tie a knot onto the crankbait, the action would be impaired of the lure. So I want to have a loops of some sort. But if I would just tie like a rappeler loop, I noticed that over the time, since these lures, you know, moves a lot, and they just wear out that stress point where loop would be connected to the lure itself, you know, to the metal loop on the lure, and that stress point kind of breaks after, I don't know, a few hours of intensive fishing. So I would attach, you know, metal clip, let's say using polymer knot, and yeah, then it's not moving, it's not wearing out, and then I would attach my little clip to the lure, having a secure connection. So yeah, that's a bit of the tackle. Okay, we talked about everything I wanted to talk when it comes to crankbait fishing for chub. Now let's make a quick pause and let's see some fish that has been nailed using crankbaits. Enjoy. We'll try and cast downstream a little bit. Here it is. Please stay on. Now I will have to get down somehow. The fish is still on. Don't panic. That's a decent fish, I think. Yeah, nice chub. Couple pounds at least. Hooked nicely just in the nose with a single hook, and he's mine. Yes. You are a beauty. Okay, Mr. Chubster, time to go back for you. Thank you. That was a little bit unexpected bite. Just was holding my lure pretty much in the flow and then bang. Actually, it might be a bubble, guys, or a, I don't know. I know it's a chub. Just wonder, or maybe it is a small bubble, I don't know. Very, very interesting. No, I think that's a decent chub. Yeah, that's a chub actually. Good size, very, very good size. As you saw, I wasn't doing anything with my rod, pretty much just holding in quite a weird angle as well, like very close to the water, and then bang. Wow, that fish is really, really strong. It will be, I think, 4 pounds, guys. Yep. It's mine. Lure came out in the net. Yeah, very, very good fish. About 50 plus centimeters. Oh yeah, easy 4 pounds, guys. Actually, I will weigh it because that's a very, very good fish. Impressive, actually. And we'll take a picture with him as well. Beautiful. Really, really fat chub. Thank you. Okay, we talked about hard lures mostly. Now let's talk about soft silicone lures presented mid-water for big chub. So, I use soft plastic lures when fishing for big chub when the water is slightly colder, as in early autumn or late spring, and chub in these situations when the water is still not like as warm, they do kind of concentrate in areas that are deeper with a little bit slower flow as well, but they are kind of willingly feeding in mid-water, but feeding on smaller lures, and they would ignore hard lures most of the time, and as a result small plastic lures like supper lures are the way, or it's the way to go. So I like to use small, like 4 to 5 centimeter lures, but that are quite bright. Usually they are white or pink. For example, the best probably, or one of the best, or one I caught the most chub on, is this pink Polaris, 4.5 centimeters long. Then I quite often use this white Tanta lure as well. Very, very good lure for chub. And quite often these kind of larva imitations are quite good. And yeah, I rig them on a jig head, depending again on the river I'm fishing or the area I'm fishing at, but usually from 1 gram to about 3 grams. Again, it will depend how fast it is and how far I'm casting, but I'm looking, you know, to fish those lures in mid-water. It's not like I'm fishing on the bottom, or I'm not really touching the bottom while shooting these kinds of lures. My lure is always like kind of in the middle of the water, more or less, and you know, I'm looking to pick up fish that are in the middle of the water or are willing to kind of swim up to intercept small lure. So yeah, this is what I'm using in these situations when the water is not cold enough for the fish to move in deeper holes for wintering, but it's not warm enough to go into the shallows. Sometimes I would use something like that as well, where I just added legs. Very, very cool lure, caught me plenty of fish. The presentation is different as well. Basically, once I cast out, again, it might depend on the situation, whether it's upstream or downstream. Usually it would be downstream because, you know, I don't want to hit the bottom, or if I would be casting upstream, I would be using way lighter jig heads just to make sure they're not hitting the bottom too soon. But yeah, presentation is basically, I always like, as I reel in slowly, always twitch with my rod tip, you know, and this kind of a lure will always kind of is twitching, you know, in mid-water, just, you know, confusing them chub, and, you know, they just can't really help themselves. They have to eat these kind of small lures that, again, are quite visible in mid-water, especially, as I say, if they are white or pink. And yeah, with the tip, I'm not doing anything crazy. Sometimes you can do, again, but I prefer just to twitch it a little bit whilst reeling in. Sometimes I would make a little pause just to let it sink, but usually just like twitch, twitch, twitch whilst I'm reeling in, and you know, this kind of a grub is dancing, you know, in mid-water, and just, as I say, they just can't help themselves and nail it. Yeah, caught plenty of fish, and it's easy to fish. And when it comes to my tackle, again, I will talk about the tackle in a section a little bit later, but I use way lighter hook lengths when I'm using these tiny grubs. So it's about 0.15. I go for, as in 0.15 millimeters in diameter fluorocarbon. Again, quite long one, let's say 80 centimeters to 1 meter. Just to make sure, you know, my presentation is a little bit more refined, and I got a tiny lure, and I got a fine line, and then I would not use any clips. I would just attach my lure via a Rapala loop or perfection loop onto my leader. So yeah, that is a bit, and I'm talking about mid-water presentation of soft silicone lures for chub. So now let's make a quick pause to see how I managed to catch a few chub using this exact technique.
Let's try there once more. Nice cast. And I'm into a bigger fish. That fish is trying to go into the weeds. I think I just got it out of the weeds. Yeah, a little bit nicer chublet. I mean, nothing big, a couple pounds maybe from what I can tell, but still it just goes to show that, you know, small lure, right color, which they love, they just will nail it if you will present it, you know, in the right place. On cranks I would be blanking, definitely I would be blanking. Nice little fish. We'll get my net in position. We have to go lower as well just to make sure that I will land them. Yep, he's mine. Maybe pound and a half, something like that, but just see that pink lure is still sticking out. Nailed nicely. Beautiful. Let's take a quick snap before letting him go. You beauty, let's get that hook out of you and let's go back. Again guys, see, the presentation is simple. All I'm doing, just reeling with my reel, as you can see, like nicely and consistently, but I am always like you know, to to shake my head, my rod tip rather, and just like introduce small twitches on the lure by twitching that rod tip. Obviously you can keep your rod tip as high as you want when fishing soft plastics. He had a bite on the drop, probably a small perch. What is it? Or a chublet. It was a good cast and pluck on the drop. No, maybe it is a chublet. Can't quite see. It is a chublet, right species. Nice. Nice little chublet. I mean, they are not massive fish, but just fantastic fish to catch. As you can see, hook just gently and just hooked. That was a good little bite. Quite aggressive though. Don't think it's a big fish though. Can I get him out? I know that there are plenty of weeds there, so that chub actually is going there into those weeds. Couple pound fish, hopefully. As you can see, that pink lure is sticking out. Nice, it's mine. Okay, time to go back for you, chubster. Thank you.
Another method of targeting big chub is by using soft silicone or plastic lures and targeting them hard on the bottom, as in bottom contact presentation. Basically, I use this approach during winter or when the fish are in the deeper holes, wintering holes often, where I can't access them using any other methods, just by something that thinks quickly and lands exactly there where I would cast it. So this type of fishing is usually very similar to perch fishing, same presentations and so on, but still I will cover it in detail. When it comes to my lures, for this kind of a fishing, I always like to use dark lures, just to make sure, you know, they are kind of blending with the environment, or they are as natural as possible. If thing as natural can be described, you know, as a silicone thing, but yeah, I do not use anything bright or crazy. Something that is 6, 7, sometimes 8 centimeters long. So, for example, these kind of grubs, dark in color. It's kind of, if you would ask what it reminds me of, it's half worm. It has this ring in the middle, but also it has a paddle tail, just to produce a little bit of vibrations, as a little fish would maybe. These are good. This kind of a worm, 6.5 centimeter lure, is quite good. Then crayfish are very good as well, but again, dark in color, like this floating one. It's fantastic. Again, it has a little bit bigger profile, so sometimes it might be too selective for big chub in winter or when the water is very cold. Again, this would be perfect, you know, in deep holes when you just can't access them with any other lure, and they are in some hole, you know, as they say, and you just need to cast your lure and it would sink exactly where you casted it. These kind of bigger crayfish, let's say in spring or even summer, is killer lure for chub. Then a little bit more supple lure, again floating one, TPR, that imitates maybe a little crayfish. It has 2 claws, but again it has those rings as worm wood. So yeah, basic approach, and I always like to go for chub when it comes to rigging it with a simple jig head. Sometimes it has eye, sometimes it doesn't. I usually try to use some like painted jig heads. Black one or dark green would be my favorite ones when I'm going for chub. Just, you know, to make my lure as compact as possible. The presentation itself is quite simple. Again, if you ever fished for perch and used soft silicone lures, so you are fishing on the bottom, and simple really presentation is probably one of the best, I would say. So you are working with the reel, as in, let's say, one turn of the reel. You feel when the jig head or the lure hit the bottom, you make like a 1 or 2 seconds pause. You can wait longer, couple or one turn of the handle of the reel again. You wait for the lure to hit the bottom again, and you repeat, and bites are usually quite good from chub, even in winter. So yeah, that's the presentation bit. All right, I covered section of bottom tie presentation for chub, and now let's speed it up and let's move on to the tackle section. I covered some of it already, but I will repeat myself in some places. So when I'm using hard lures, as in topwaters or crankbaits, I always use micro clips just to make sure the stress point is kind of metal to metal, not line to metal, because those crankbaits especially, they do produce lots of, you know, vibrations, and it wears out the line if it was attached to the line via Rapala loop, for example. Then when it comes to my lines, my hook links, very short and thick lines, when I'm topwater fishing, it makes no difference. And, you know, often I would hook a pike and I would be able to land on thick fluorocarbon hook links that are short. Then when crankbait fishing, I'm using again long hook links, 80 centimeters to 1 meter, diameters of 0.20 to 0.23, again fluorocarbon, just to make sure they are as little visible as possible. Then when I'm fishing on micro grubs, or like 4-5 centimeter grubs, I'm using 0.15 or sometimes even 0.13 fluorocarbon hook links, again about 1 meter or 80 centimeters long. Then when I'm using bottom tie presentation, I'm using 0.18 to 0.20 fluorocarbon hook links, 60 to 82 centimeters long. Now when it comes to my main line, I always use braid, and diameters usually go 0.4 to 0.6. Unless I'm using those small grubs in mid-water type presentation, then I would use like 0 PE or go 0.3, just a little bit finer, so I would get better sink rates and better presentation, and I would feel delicate bites better as well. But those are my lines. Now when it comes to rods and reels, it really will depend on exact rod, on your rivers that you will be fishing. Obviously bigger rivers will require longer casts and better presentation and better lure control, meaning your rods will need to be longer. And if you're fishing smaller rivers, then short rods will be the way to go. I would say I use for chub from anything from 6 feet, so 1 meter and 80 centimeters, all the way up to like 2.4 meters or 8 feet long rods. But the action is always the same, or power is always the same. I would say you need to go light or medium light, so casting rating up to 15 grams. You don't want to be using ultralights, because quite often, as I mentioned, chub will produce very aggressive bites, and first contact always will be with the rod, so rod needs to be kind of forgiving, and the action of the rod must be medium fast or fast. You don't want to be, or to have something that is just extra fast, that only tip bends. As I say, sometimes those bites will be super aggressive, and first contact will be with the rod, and you want that rod to bend a little bit. So you want it to be sensitive, yes, but you want it to bend. So medium fast action, but sensitive, good quality blank is the way to go. And casting rating, I don't know, from 3-4 grams, from 2 grams to about 12-15 is about perfect for every situation. If you just want to get one rod for chub fishing, go with like right in the middle, 7 feet, like 2 meters and 10 centimeters. It will cover you in most situations, unless you are fishing very small rivers or very big river, then, you know, it might be not very good. And yeah, when it comes to the reel, match it with a rod, and just to have this perfect balance, you know, so the balance would be around here, so you'd be able to obviously I don't have my tip on my rod, but yeah, the balance, like if you let it go, it must be somewhere here. And with the rods I described, usually it will be reel Again, compact reel from 2,000 to 3,000 size. Again, it might mean anything, you know, because those reels might be, let's say 2,000 size might be 150 grams. Another reel, the same size, might be 400 grams. So yeah, just make sure, you know, to get the right one to get this balance. So yeah, that's the tackle in a nutshell. Tricks and tips section. The first one I want to share with you goes like this. Basically, after casting out a floating lure, either if it's a topwater or a crankbait or a soft silicone, but it must be floating, basically after lure lands, you want to give it a good second before starting your retrieve. Quite often, I don't know what is it, but chub would strike exactly at the same kind of time. As soon as a lure lands, you will get a bite and hook a fish. It happens very, very often, and again, I'm not too certain what it is, why they take it, you know, like motionless lure, but to my understanding is they're kind of taking the opportunity, kind of assuming that some animal, I don't know, bug or whatever, just fell into the water and it's not moving, it's kind of stunned. They are kind of, again, being opportunistic and trying to nail it immediately. You'll get quite a few bites, you know, just using this little trick. Again, cast out, won't wait very long, like just count 1, 2. If nothing happened, most likely it won't happen. You can start your retrieve and get a bite from a chub later, but quite often you'll get a bite very, very quickly after lure landing, but you have to make sure that you're giving, you know, time, as in 1-2 seconds, no longer. Fantastic tip. When casting, and if your line lands over the stick, you know, your lure is in the water, but your line just lands over the stick. It happens quite often if you will be fishing in, you know, in areas with quite a bit of vegetation around. Basically, what you do after your line lands on the stick, you just reel in, just to make sure the line is going from the stick vertically, you know, and the kind of the lure is going down vertically from the stick, and all you do is just kind of twitch it a little bit, just to make sure, you know, the bottom of the lure or half of the lure is kind of producing some sort of a like wake in the water. And very often, if it's a good area, chub would come and intercept the lure whilst the line is being on the branch, and would hook itself and would take the line off the branch. As I say, it won't fuck if the branch is, you know, thick. You shouldn't be doing that. But if the branch is kind of just a twig, you know, thick one that is bendy, chub would take it and would take the lure and would take the line off the stick, leaving you, you know, in a quite a good situation, as in from 0 to hero. You were in the snag more or less, and you end up with fish hooked and not in the snag anymore, you know. That's the best possible scenario you can get in this situation. Again, it happens quite often. It happens with trout too, but with chub it happens also. So yeah, always, you know, make sure that you try to get out of the worst situation. Very good trip or trick, and it will catch you a few extra fish, I'm certain. Trick number 3 goes like this. When using hard lures, right, and chub fishing, always try to use or replace trebles with singles. We performed a couple of experiments and really noticed that when fishing for chub, difference, you know, when it comes to bites to landed fish ratio is not really better on when using treble hooks, and I assume it will be to do with the fact that chub do have kind of soft mouth, but they are kind of strong, so they would not tear as easily. So if the hook would go in, it would stay in. And, you know, trebles do create lots of other issues. You know, you can hook itself, you can hook, I don't know, obstacles, branches way easier. And if you are using landing net, you know, it will get tangled with the fish and, you know, just way more damage, way more risks with trebles. So yeah, always, if you can, please consider replacing hooks to single ones. But if you are using trebles and refusing to use single, make sure you use bobblers or just squeeze the bobs to make sure as little damage to yourself and to the fish too. But it will be it from me for today. I hope you learned plenty. And before saying goodbye, I will mention a couple of more things. One, I will leave a few links in the description below when it comes to my lures, lines, and so on, when it comes to chub fishing, and yeah, that I use and recommend. And if I would not mention something, or it's plenty of information I talked about, and there is a chance that I won't leave some links to some items that I use and recommend in the description below. If that will happen, make sure you write down a comment and I will come back to you as soon as possible. Number two, I do guided chub fishing sessions on lures. If you are interested, use that email, as you can see on the screen right now, to contact me, and we'll get you booked and you will catch some chub, good ones hopefully, during that guided session. That's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.